My heart was thrilled with this new Christ-given love for pagan souls, human beings made in the image of God, yet living in heathen darkness, and immediately began intensive training for the mission field. When mission leaders pointed out the need for pioneer work in Western Equatorial Africa, my wife and I volunteered.
My name is David Thompson. I've been a missionary since 1975. I'm a physician and a general surgeon, and my wife and I have served in the country of Gabon since 1977. We're at Bongolo this whole time, developing the Bongolo Hospital. I first learned about Don Fairley when I arrived in Gabon. The African pastors, they all talked in reverent tones about Don Fairley. Before Don Fairley came, the people had no knowledge of God. They really lived in fear of spirits, and the great spirit god of that era was Bwiti. There was no escape from the Bwiti religion. Either you were a part of it or you died. If you didn't participate, you'd be accused of sorcery and you would be executed. People really did things that were abnormal. Ritual cannibalism. People believed that twins shared the same soul. So one twin would be left out in the forest for the animals to eat because that was considered the best thing to do. If people were accused of sorcery, they had to be executed. The place of execution for the whole region where Bongolo was above the falls. They would tie these people up, then they would throw them off. People died in pairs because one was always executed for the death of the other. The old people told us that before the gospel came and when everybody was following the Bwiti religion, there were thousands of people who had already been executed just at Bongolo, and there were other places around the country where this went on as well. Because of this religion, because of disease, because of the difficulty of living in the forest and wild animals, the population of Gabon was actually declining before the gospel came. When Don was making his survey trip, one of the places that he went was in the southern part of Gabon. There was a chief of all of the tribes in that region, and he came to Don and he said to him, "I really want you to come and stay in my village." And Don said, "Well, I can't promise you when I will come. I will promise to come back." And so the chief gave him his stick. Now, these sticks were sort of like Pharaoh's scepter. They were the symbol of power. And so he said to Don, "I'm giving you this stick." And Don said, "I will bring it back." Well, the Alliance leadership had said to Don, "We cannot open a new field without funding." Don had to raise $5,000 during the third year of the Depression, and the Alliance was much smaller than it is now. People were without jobs. It was far worse than the recession that we're talking about now. I mean, it was just this huge, impossible amount of money. But he was so convinced that God was calling them to do this, he didn't doubt that God would provide for him. At every presentation, he would show that stick, and he went from church to church for a whole year and raised $2,000. He was still $3,000 short at almost the end of his first furlough. When Don Fairley came to Omaha, to the Gospel Tabernacle, that was his last church on his scheduled furlough. It was make it or break it. He got up and he preached his heart out. He told the story with the stick. He told all the stories of his trip there. The Holy Spirit really did an amazing thing. People took off their watches and put them in the offering plate. And they took off their wedding rings and their engagement rings, and they put them in the offering plate. And the total came to $3,000. I can't tell that story without getting emotional, because that opened the door for the people of Gabon. The number of Christians in the Alliance in Gabon today is probably around 50,000. It's now the largest evangelical church in the country of Gabon. I think if Don Fairley had not obeyed God, I think if he had not been able to get the funding that he needed to go, God would not have forgotten the people of South Gabon, but it would have looked very different. And there would have been thousands of people who would have perished without the knowledge of Christ. The consequences of generosity, the consequences of spirit-filled sacrifice are huge. God can do so much more when we are obedient.
So if you're a guest with us, or this is your first time with us, that kind of gives you a hint at who we are as the part of a Christian Missionary Alliance movement. We care very much about missions. We care very much that there are still people locally but also globally in every point in between, who have yet to have ready access to the gospel, who have heard about Jesus, and been given an opportunity to respond to the gospel message. And by the way, it's not just a once and done response to the gospel message. Oftentimes it takes 8 or more times of significant conversations for people to respond positively to the gospel message. That's who we are. That's what we're about. I forgot about that video, and it moves me every time I see it. It's amazing the sacrifices that people have been willing to make to ensure that the gospel message goes forth. If you're a guest with us, in the seat back in front of you, there's a welcome card. There's a card that we just asked that as the plates come by here in just a couple of minutes, that you just drop the communication code, fill it out first, and then put it in the plate. And that's all we ask of you if you're a first timer or second timer with us. Everybody else, we just ask that you would give as the Lord is leading you to give. It unfortunately still costs money to do ministry. It costs money to put the lights on. It costs money to make sure the water flows so that we can use the restrooms. Those are important things. So with that, here in just a moment, I will be inviting the ushers to come forward, and I'll pray over the offering. But if you are curious about a couple of things, our annual business meeting will be this Wednesday. We were going to have it last week, but for reasons, we moved it to this Wednesday at 6. If you are curious about what membership in the Christian Missionary Alliance Church looks like, there's a course to sign up for. It's also in the foyer for you to sign up on that. And then in anticipation that people are going to place their faith in Jesus during this run up to Easter, I'm planning on having a baptism service on the Sunday after Easter. So if you have yet to place your faith in Jesus, or you have and not yet been baptized, sign up for that. That would be great. With that, I'm going to invite the ushers to come forward, and I'll pray over the offering, and we'll start this service. I almost said show. It's not a show, Kendra. Jesus, we do invite you into this space this morning. We are so